I know a lot of appraisers out there that I've talked to personally that have had their appraisals tampered with by some not disinterested party
Right,
that
right.
maybe changed something in their appraisal. So if your appraisal was stored in a blockchain methodology, you can rest assured that it will be exactly what you transmit to the blockchain.
Originating from deep inside the Rocky Mountains, transported through the power of the internet, and arriving inside your tiny earbuds. It's the Appraiser Coach Podcast, helping appraisers increase their efficiency, quality, and make more money. Here's the guy who makes it his life's mission to create value for real estate appraisers nationwide. Your host and the Appraiser Coach, Dustin Harris.
And welcome to the program, everybody. Dustin Harris hanging out with you, podcast chair. Got another exciting episode for you. Want to remind you, we are sponsored, of course, by Alamode Software. Alamode, of course, is rolling out Titan reports. You should be aware of what it does and how it can help your company. Check them out. Go to alamode.com for more information. Of course, we're sponsored by Datamaster. Speaking of rolling out, Datamaster is rolling out Datamaster 6. I've seen this technology, folks. It is incredible. It will help you to be a better appraiser. Check them out. Go to datamasterusa.com. And finally, we are sponsored by OREP Insurance. OREP, of course, is the E&O that I use. You should be too. The benefits that come with it are phenomenal. Check them out. Go to orep.org. One more time, it's orep.org. Well, folks, got kind of we've heard this term in the industry, and I thought it would be important to have an episode on this. But frankly, I have not had the right person come along to explain this to numbskulls like myself on what this technology is until my good friend, Mr. Ernie Durban, came along. And welcome to the program, Ernie, once again. It's good to have you back.
Good to be here, Dustin.
Let me introduce you really quick, and then we're going to introduce the topic here. Ernie, of course, is the Chief Valuation Officer at Clarosity, great company, by the way. He's been 35 plus years in the real estate valuation sphere. He's in the greater Cincinnati area. Ernie is formerly on the Appraisal Practices Board at the Appraisal Foundation. He also serves as the Industry Advisory Council of the Appraisal Foundation, and Ernie is he's on the Executive Council of the CRN, the Collateral Risk Network. And Ernie, you wrote an article recently that garnered my attention because I know this is something that I've wanted to talk about on the podcast, but again, I haven't really found the right person, but didn't know you knew so much about blockchain, man.
I guess blockheads knew a lot about blockchain.
Yeah, well, I like your self-deprecating humor, but truly, the article that you put out, and by the way, it went through the Buzz magazine, and I know you've done another one for Valuation magazine as well. But if people want to find this, I highly encourage you pick this up because Ernie, I'll tell you, the article that you put out, by the way, it's called "Blockchain Technology That You Can Trust." So if people want to Google that, just go to the Buzz magazine and just type in blockchain, and it'll probably come up. But the whole article title is Blockchain Technology You Can Trust. Honestly, Ernie, sometimes this stuff gets a little bit difficult to wade through. I did not find that to be the case when I read your article. Frankly, I understood blockchain better than I had before, and I think anybody could read your article and walk away going, okay, I get it now. Tell us a little bit about your article. What's the purpose of the article itself?
Well, the purpose is I think that we are going to be running into blockchain technology as appraisers. Been an appraiser for 35 years in SRA and dealt with data for a long time, both individually in my own practice in Greater Cincinnati and then on a nationwide basis in Clarosity's practice. And so, data, one of the things that I said, I want to say, I can't remember which article was in this, is that big data makes a big difference.
Okay.
To appraisers. And I think sometimes appraisers are afraid of big data.
I think you're right.
But the truth of the matter is it probably will make our jobs easier and less likely to show up in front of boards if we understand where that data comes from. We can validate it.
Okay.
And that's where I think blockchain is probably going to come into its own in our business. But now, before we get there, unfortunately, blockchain is deeply commingled with Bitcoin, right?
Yes, it is.
And so, because every time you read about Bitcoin or you try to understand Bitcoin, which that's something to wrap your head around right there,
sure.
the idea of a virtual currency. But inevitably, people mention blockchain technology there. And, actually, it's interesting. I had an email conversation with Jonathan Miller this morning about blockchain. And I really like an analogy that he used. He said, hey, you know what? A Bitcoin is like the app on your phone, and your phone is blockchain, right?
Okay.
So
okay.
the way to think about it is, and that's a great analogy, because blockchain is the underlying technology that makes Bitcoin work.
So Bitcoin uses blockchain, but blockchain is not Bitcoin.
No.
Yeah.
No, you really couldn't have Bitcoin without blockchain technology.
Okay.
But the technology that enables it, blockchain can be used for so many things, because it's an immutable, unchangeable record of things that can track individual data points, from their inception and how they change forward. Now, I mean, a crazy way to think about this, but they're actually developing it, is in the agricultural industry. You think about recently, right before Thanksgiving, there was a big scare on romaine lettuce.
Oh, yeah.
Do you remember that?
Oh, yeah.
Everybody says, hey, don't have lettuce with your Thanksgiving dinner. Well, if those crates of lettuce were just tagged with a barcode that was in a blockchain network, you would know exactly where that tainted lettuce came from.
Okay.
Without having to spend all that time, because you could just trace it back to the source.
Right.
So I guess what I'm saying is blockchain is useful. The blockchain data technology is useful in anything that requires tracking and verifying data. And Bitcoin is just, don't divorce Bitcoin from blockchain.
Okay.
If you can in your mind, because they're not the same, right? They're you don't have to have Bitcoin for blockchain, but you have to have blockchain
for Bitcoin. Okay. So let's take and let's do exactly what you suggest. Let's take Bitcoin and put it off to the side for a second. Okay. Let's just get down to the nuts and bolts. Okay. It's our freshman year. It's our first class. It's 101. It's blockchain 101. We're sitting down in the seats, and the professor, the great Ernie Durban, stands before us. And the question on the board is, what is blockchain? Let's start there.
The simplest way to explain it is a distributed ledger.
Okay.
So now you think about ledgers in general. We use ledgers. We've used them for ages. I mean, they've been around literally since you had stone tablets, right? Sure. I mean, a ledger is electronically, we think of a ledger as something that's in Excel, right? Okay. Or a spreadsheet program.
Yeah.
Most common ledger, although I don't think people balance their checkbook anymore. A common example of a ledger, if you will, is a checkbook. I mean, it used to be we would balance our checkbooks.
Do we even have checkbooks anymore?
Yeah, I don't know. I mean, it's all on our phones and stuff. But, but think about back in the day when you had a checkbook and you'd make an entry. If you entered the amount wrong, and you continued to make those ink entries over and over, and then later on you got the check back from the bank and you looked at it and says, oh, that was off by 80 cents. This previous transaction, you would just make a new correct entry in the ledger, right? And so what you do is say, oh, wait a minute, this transaction number or check number, if you will, should have been 20 cents and not 80 cents. So therefore, let's subtract 60 cents from the ledger, and now our balance is right. So it's a non-destructive way to manage data. You always have the previous record. And if things change, you change forward by tying it to that previous record. Okay. So now the difference is a distributed ledger is not just on my computer, but it's on multiple computers at once, right?
Okay.
And so anytime I make a change, that gets verified out through the network, and it's a cryptographic puzzle that needs to be solved. And then when it gets to 51% of the network, then it's considered a verified transaction. So not instead of having one central source where you go to for data, it's distributed widely, and everyone has that record. It's very transparent.
So let me see if I can maybe pare it back how I'm understanding this. If I've never heard of blockchain before, I should start with this idea of a ledger. In other words, keeping track of running transactions in a particular account, or tied to a particular piece of real estate, or what have you. The difference between a ledger, what you're saying, a ledger and a blockchain, is that a blockchain is more of a virtual, meaning there are more. In other words, instead of just having your checkbook in front of you, you've got multiple people that have access to and can edit that ledger, or can put things in that ledger. How does that work?
Well, not necessarily. I mean, they can. Everyone can have different levels of read and write permissions, but generally speaking, they don't edit, they just record different transactions, right? So, but I mean, you certainly, it depends upon how the software is set up. You certainly can give people the ability to edit. But if they do edit that transaction, it then has to be verified back through the whole network.
So we shouldn't look at this like a wiki page where somebody can make a change and it's changed for everybody. If a change is made, if you are authorized and you make a change in that ledger, then it goes out to the network and it has to be verified by that network. And once a majority have verified that, it now becomes a permanent piece of the record.
Exactly. And there are transactional bits that go along with all of these things. And so they're called keys, right? So, I mean, I might have a personal key to the data, and then there'll be an open key where everyone might be able to look at a transaction and see that transaction occurred, but may not know necessarily where, or who engaged who in that transaction. So even though you can trust the data, you can maintain some anonymity too, which is interesting.
All right. So you talked about, and I know the big question on everybody's mind is, so what, Ernie, what does this have to do with appraisers? And we're going to get there, I promise. After the break, we're going to talk about how this really affects appraiser, if it affects appraisers going forward. I guess we should start there. But in order to help really dig down as to why we're talking today, Ernie, you've talked about Bitcoin, okay? You've talked about romaine lettuce. Where else is this blockchain being used?
Oh, it's being used in the title industry. It's just now beginning to be used there. I mean, when you think about a chain of title, right? It's the same thing. So as data is added, it would be appended to previous previous transactions of that particular piece of property. So rather than having to go through a title search every time, you would have the data right there, and that really could present some real disruption to the title industry.
I was going to say, are they a little bit worried about their job? I mean, their whole job is to go back and research all of this. If it's right there with a click of a button, that might change their job a little bit.
It might change their job a little bit, yes. But at the end of the day, I think forward-thinking title companies are already kind of working in this space, right? Data aggregator is another place that it's very valuable. When you think about the people that kind of control, there's only a few companies that control public record data nationwide, right? I mean, there's First American, there's CoreLogic, and there's a few other small companies, and then there are multiple people out there that might be aggregating MLS data, including, of course, Zillow, right?
Yeah.
Well, think about how many times have you looked at data online somewhere, and then you look at another source and it's different, and so now your job as an appraiser is to verify that data and to reconcile that data. Yeah. So if you have 5 or 6 disparate sources of data, let's just use a data point like gross living area, right? And you begin to see a pattern. You can verify exactly through blockchain data technology. You can verify exactly where that data point came from, and how it's been passed along. It may be, for instance, I see this all the time, where you have maybe five people that say that the property's 1,200 square feet, and another appraiser says 1,380. Right.
Right.
So immediately you think, well, that guy's whacked. because he's not the same as each five. Well, not necessarily, because it could be that all five have just been using the county record,
data,
which is in error, and the person that measured it had it at 1380.
Yeah.
And so the source of that data, and then when you verify that data, you can either enrich or penalize people that have contributed to the data in the past, and not in a huge way, but if you are a person who is selling data and your data is verified as the most accurate, you're going to get more transactions than the average person who's just passing along other information. So
interesting.
In data verification, it could be huge for appraisers in the future, because we'll be able to know the source of that information.
Right. And it may be ourselves.
That I think is rich.
Yeah.
It could be.
Yeah.
Absolutely. And imagine a future also where you're contributing to the data chain, and you're actually being paid for that. That'd be nice, wouldn't it?
That would be nice. I like getting paid. So this is not a new technology, Ernie. I mean, it's probably you said it goes back to stone tablets as far as ledgers go, but
ledgers are not new. What's new is the way this information is distributed through different nodes on a network, and with it basically one person begins the distribution, and they create what's called a proof of work, which is essentially a mathematical puzzle that goes along with the data point as it's passed on to other computers in the node. They have to solve that puzzle to verify the identity of the person passing it on, and then they can cross-verify the data with other sources and then append it to the ledger. So it's the ability to use network to distribute that information to a lot of different places that's unique. That's what's new about blockchain.
And with any new technology, or at least a twist on an old technology, you're going to have problems. They're going to creep up. As you've studied blockchain, Ernie, what types of problems have they had to deal with?
Well, I mean, the biggest problem right now is scalability. I mean, when you think about, for instance, I know we were going to divorce ourselves from Bitcoin. But
I brought it up, so you can.
Let's use them as an example real quick. A Bitcoin transaction is really, who has the Bitcoin, what's the value of the coin, and who's it being transferred to, right? And the date and timestamp with that. So let's call that 4 data points, right? That you're passing that along. Well, the difference is that you have thousands and thousands and thousands of nodes around the world that verify Bitcoin. So it can take, right now, I think I read an article recently where the average speed of a Bitcoin transaction is seven transactions a minute.
Okay.
Now, or a second, rather. I'm sorry, pardon me. Now, that doesn't sound like that slow, 7 per second, but MasterCard's doing 20,000 transactions a second, right? So
wow.
There's a real scalability there, because MasterCard is a centralized server where everything goes there and then goes back out. And so, when you begin to look at the calculations that have to be done to verify data as it's passed along the blockchain network, it also uses a tremendous amount of energy. Like the Bitcoin transactions that occurred last year would have been roughly equivalent to the same to 1.5% of the energy used by the United States.
Wow.
Electric energy. Right?
Yeah.
And so, so there are, until some of those scalability issues are solved.
Gotcha.
It's going to be a while before it's implemented. But you remember back whenever we started with the internet in the early 90s, it'd been around well before that in academic circles and in military circles. Yep. But when we started, you and I used to log in with 96. Well, maybe you didn't, but I did.
Oh, I did.
With 9,600 baud modems, which we were tickled with because they were so much better than the 1,200K we had before.
I remember.
Well, now, I mean, for heaven's sakes, who in the world you wouldn't even think about a dial-up connection, right, and actually doing work on that. That's how things have changed in the scalability of the internet. Well, you can expect those same changes in scalability in blockchain.
Yeah, yeah, and it's amazing. I tell you, as the technology rolls out and the more we learn about it, the more it completely changes our lives. We're talking with Ernie Durban. Ernie, of course, is an expert on all kinds of things, and lately become an expert on not Bitcoin, but blockchain. We're going to come back, Ernie, in just a little bit and talk about what this means for appraisers and how we as appraisers might have to change the way that we do things in the future, if at all. And so hang tight, Ernie. First, want to pause here and remind you about some other great technology that's helping our lives become easier. One of them is Alamode. Alamode is, of course, the software that I've been using for many, many years, over 20 years now, to complete my appraisal reports. And there's a reason that I stick with Alamode. Yes, I know there was a big takeover, if you will, this last year, but I continue to stick with Alamode. Why? Because I've looked at the other companies out there, folks, and they're great companies. They are. Don't get me wrong. But Alamode continues to serve me and continues to be what I choose for the great quality and the great efficiency that I look to in my appraisal software company. Alamode is where it's at. Find them at www.alamode.com or 800-ALAMODE. I had an opportunity to sit down with Rick Liffrith 2 weeks ago. He and I sat down and he showed me once again the new DataMaster 6. We had an opportunity to meet with other appraisers in my area, and I'll tell you, it's probably the fourth time I've gone through DataMaster 6, and it's the fourth time that I've been blown away with what DataMaster is doing for appraisers and the ability to analyze before you import, the ability to complete some pretty amazing things within DataMaster with photos, with descriptions, with former comps that you might have saved in their database. It is an amazing technology, folks. If you've not looked at this technology, you need to go to datamasterusa.com. Find out how DataMaster can save you 30 to 60 minutes per report. Finally, we are sponsored today by OREP Insurance. OREP, of course, is the E&O that I switched to several years ago. I switched mainly because they asked me if I would be willing to have them on as a sponsor. Well, folks, you know I don't do anything with sponsors unless I'm using them myself, and that I can fully endorse them with a full testimonial. I ended up switching. I ended up saving money. I've ended up saving money each and every year that I stick with OREP, not to mention all of the great benefits. And so I can fully endorse OREP as an E&O. Now, I know you don't think about E&O very often, folks. It's usually on your renewal date. This time, when you renew this year, would you please check out OREP Insurance? It's OREP.org. One more time, it's OREP.org. All right, folks, welcome back. Ernie Durban is on the line, my good friend, and he wrote an article recently that you could find at The Buzz magazine. It's called Blockchain Technology You Can Trust. Ernie, I mean, this stuff gets a little bit confusing. I've heard a lot about blockchain the last few months, I guess. It's really been on the dial, if you will. It wasn't until I read your article that I really truly understood what blockchain was, and more importantly, why it should affect or might affect appraisers. Let's go there next. We've talked about title companies. Okay, we've talked about the agricultural industry. We've talked, of course, about Bitcoin. Let's talk appraisers. Why should appraisers care about this new technology?
Well, let me back up just a second and talk about the way it occurs. So a blockchain stores information in things that are called blocks. They're linked together in chronological order in that ledger that we talked about in a continuous chain of information. That's where you get blockchain together, right? So, you can't really make changes to the previous pieces of information. You just add a new block with correct information on the front, right? And then you might have in the note there, X was changed to Y because of whatever. Mm-hmm. And then all renditions of that data in the distributed network have that same record. Okay, so nothing is it's non-destructive. You can always see it. It'll be there, forever, if you will. And each one of those has a hash, what's called a hash, which is essentially like an electronic fingerprint that's unique to that individual block. So if you tried to change it, Dustin, you will change the hash, which breaks that mathematical code that we talked about and invalidates the data, okay. Right? Okay. So it's tamper-proof. Now, I know a lot of appraisers out there that I've talked to personally that have had their appraisers, their appraisals tampered with by some not disinterested party
Right.
that maybe changed something in their appraisal. So if your appraisal was stored in a blockchain methodology, you can rest assured that it will be exactly what you transmit to the blockchain.
Okay. Well, that sounds like good news for appraisers.
That is very good news, I think. And I mean, if you're before a state board and they were to give you an example of something, you say, no, this is exactly my verified report that was transmitted. So I can't speak to what what you have in your hand. It's not my right. So you can't really tamper with it. That's very important. So if we thought about storing our work in the future in a blockchain database versus a standard distributed or multi-tier database, it would be safer. Our work would be our own, right? So that's one thing. That's one way in which appraisers may benefit from it.
Okay.
The nice thing about this is like, hey, you benefit from the internet every day, but sure. I doubt probably all the intricacies of networking, and neither do I. So you don't have to be a watchmaker to tell time, right? And so by the same token, appraisers will use blockchain technology in the future to protect themselves. Someone else will develop that technology, but they're really going to do their job the way they've been doing their job. The difference is that they'll know that, for instance, the work can't be tampered with. Okay. And then, of course, you can verify where data comes from other places and know whether something's accurate or not. So if somebody is providing inaccurate information, we can find that source of inaccurate information, and you can know as an appraiser, I'm not going to trust that source anymore, or they can begin to correct their behavior. Otherwise, they're just not going to be, since you can find them and know where the data came from, it's better for verification, right? Yeah. And then the other thing is it's the data that you have. And really, you can control your input to the blockchain. So it's possible in the future for you to essentially remove your transactions from it. I mean, there's blockchain technologies allows you to move data from one area to another. It's obviously a new ledger entry, but the data can be locked down, if you will, without your hash key. So it's really more about security and about data that you can trust as an appraiser. And I think nowadays we see data coming at us from all different sorts, and we are evaluated by big data all the time, and by think about Collateral Underwriter and other programs that use vast amounts of data and then double check what we're saying. Well, if they begin to be based on blockchain technology, there'll be some self-correction there, and you won't necessarily be the person that's always the one that's just the oddball, even if you have the data that's correct.
So it sounds to me, Ernie, like we as appraisers will be affected two ways. And correct me if I'm wrong here, but what I'm understanding is one way that blockchain is going to affect us is where we get our data from, and the other side is we are actually going to be. Would you agree that we're going to be contributing to that blockchain? Right.
Yes. We can make a decision whether I mean, appraisers don't have to contribute their data. They can always, request that their data not be contributed by their clients. The catch is that a lot of times clients take our reports apart and break them down into data, and if we're not willing to sign that agreement to share our data, then they just don't give us business.
Once it's out of our hands, it's out of our hands. Well, so correct me if I'm wrong. The way I'm understanding what you're explaining here, and I think the way I understood when I read your article, and maybe this is too naive, so I'm asking you to correct the record here, but I kind of imagine a blockchain. I don't know if that's how you even said a path, if you will, for every piece of property out there, starting from when it's bare ground to when it gets, the utilities, to when it gets a house built on it, to when the house burns down, to when the house transfers. And in other words, there's this ledger, if you will, using your earlier analogy, all the way back. And we can trace basically every major thing that's happened with that, including an appraisal that may have gotten done on that property. Am I understand this right?
Well, that's actually very interesting that you mentioned that, Dustin, because there are people working on that type of technology right now that is kind of a collateral DNA, if you will, right?
Mm-hmm.
So where you trace events on properties. And the way blockchain technology can be useful there is you can distribute that information to a lot of people to verify it. And it doesn't have to be reside on one central server. So you can have, for instance, the treasurer's department or the auditor's department as the case it is in Ohio, might have transaction records, whereas the building and zoning department might have another record. But when they're distributed in a blockchain, they can be unified and verified against each other.
Interesting.
Right? So, yes, I think that's the answer. And then I'm there are many municipalities that have multiple listing services. Multiple listing services, hard to say. They have many multiple listing services. Okay. Serving their community. Well, it would be nice to see data that is verified between the two of those as well, right? So I think the big opportunity for real estate in the future is data verification, and I know there are companies working on this right now, and basically the source of that data can come from a lot of different places, and you can anonymously verify it against each other, and then, if you will, anonymously economically penalize those people that are putting in, the wrong data, and enrich those people that are contributing good data. So ultimately, that means that we get better data at the end. Now, the other side of this, and I just want to be honest and straightforward here, is this: the more reliable data becomes, the easier it is to use that data in AVM technology and with artificial intelligence to emulate appraiser behavior. Sure. So it's a two-edged sword.
It is. So, Ernie, my audience is very savvy. They're very forward-thinking. They're always preparing for the future. What advice would you give my audience who's saying, okay, Ernie, I get it. I understand now what blockchain is. I understand that it's going to be a big part of the real estate world, including the appraisal valuation world. What do I need to do to get prepared, if anything?
Again, I don't think you need to become a watchmaker. So, I read up on it on a regular basis just because I'm interested in understanding how it works. And, but I think that most likely technology companies will be bringing it to you. And so I'm not sure I think we need to remain focused on being, our core competency, and that is being good valuers and, allowing technology companies to develop that. But I guess what I'm saying is I think it will be a benefit for our community. I would encourage appraisers to read up on any technology that's beginning to be implemented in the real estate industry, including blockchain and virtual reality. That's a whole nother discussion for another day.
Yes, it is.
But there are ways to measure houses with devices now it's pretty amazing what will be in the future for us to make our jobs more accurate and maybe a little faster.
If nothing else, it's not going to be boring.
I guarantee you, Dustin, the next 5 years in our business will not be boring.
I love it. Mr. Ernie Durban joining us from do I dare say, Ernie? I know you're from Cincinnati, but man, you're
no, that's right. I'm actually in Florida in my Airstream trailer. We made a decision to live in this for a while when we sold our family home, and so I work from wherever.
I love it. And, that's a great thing. Speaking of technology, isn't that a great thing that we can be anywhere in the world and do what we do? It's amazing.
Absolutely. Anywhere where there's an airport is my caveat.
There you go. Ernie Durban, thank you for joining us once again, talking about blockchain technology. One more time, it is the Appraisal Buzz. You can go there and just type in the word blockchain, but the whole name of the article, Blockchain Technology You Can Trust. As always, Ernie, thank you for joining us.
Thank you, Dustin.
You've been listening to the Appraiser Coach podcast with Dustin Harris. If you like what you hear, please give us a 5-star rating and post a short review on iTunes. For more in-depth insider information on how you can make more money as a real estate appraiser, visit theappraisercoach.com and sign up for the All-Star team today. Thanks for joining us. And now, get out there and create some value.
If you are now.
All right, hold on, Ernie. I think you're.
In fact,